Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. It is 2 p.m. in New York, so we're going to get started with our final career guidance webinar of the fall. This is our last webinar in a series of 10 that we've been doing at this time every Tuesday, and we've covered topics like preparing for an interview, creating a cover letter, networking. This is probably my favorite session of the series, where we're going to speak with actual alumni and one current participant who have done the Career Training USA program. I'm going to ask them questions and let them say in their own words what the program was like and what they've been doing since the program. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and I'll read them off as they come in. If not, I have plenty of questions of my own. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Career Training USA, we are a nonprofit cultural exchange organization based in New York City. Our mission is to promote cross-cultural exchange between young professionals in other countries and young professionals in the United States, as well as students through different work, study, and cultural exchange programs. The Career Training USA program within InterExchange specifically assists interns and trainees who are coming to the United States to receive training in their field of study or their recent career. So the program is a great program that allows for many different career paths and opportunities. And we've seen, as you'll hear, even with COVID-19, there's still room for tons of cultural exchange opportunities through the intern and trainee program. A bit of housekeeping before we start the session. Everyone is muted. So if you do have any questions, the best way to ask them is through the chat feature. If you arrive a little bit late, or if you need to leave early, or if your internet cuts out midway through the presentation, don't worry, you will get a recording of this session. So no worries if you want to go back and review some of the answers that you'll hear from our panelists. That's something you'll get in the next 24 hours or so. So before we start the question and answer period, I do want to introduce our four Career Training USA alumni in no order, well, alphabetical order, I guess. Actually, we'll start with Camille. She completed a marketing internship in New York City in 2019. We're also joined by Gail. He completed a business administration and management traineeship in Georgia in 2021. He actually returned to France just this summer. Lucy, who completed an architecture internship in New York City in 2015 and then returned for an architecture traineeship with a different organization in Boston. And she also finished up in 2021. And then Sang-Kyung, who is currently completing a political science and government internship in Washington, D.C. That's a very brief introduction for the four of you. I'm actually just going to put myself on mute and let, in your own words, if all four of you want to just tell us a little bit more about your cultural exchange program in the United States and maybe what you've been up to since you returned home. So we'll start with Camille since I introduced you first. If you want to tell us a little bit more about your time in your marketing internship in New York City.
Thank you, Tamam. Yeah, sure. So I did an internship with Hermès of Paris, and maybe you know the luxury brand in marketing, and it was for 1 year in New York City. And I had the occasion there to work a lot with sales team as well. So this is very important for me because the next adventure was at this crossroad between marketing and sales. So this internship allowed me to discover what I really liked. And now my current job in France actually is as a customer success manager. So this is really at the crossroad of the different company and client stakes. So that was really brief, but yeah, 1 year in New York with Hermès, and I really enjoyed it. So I hope everybody listening will have the opportunity to do one as well.
Excellent. Gail, can you tell us a little bit about your traineeship?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Gail. So I've done my trainee at Treetop Quest. Treetop Quest, it's 4 adventure parks between Georgia and New York. And at that time, our mission was to challenge people with new heights, connect people with the environment, connect people with a new kind of sport. And I was developing the business branch of our outdoor adventure parks. And that was not an easy task during the pandemic, but we've done it. And yeah, my job was to attract more and more customers, to make the park more attractive every day, and just to enjoy these aerial parks and zip lines. Now I'm working also in the amusement park industry. I'm working for an indoor amusement park, a new one. So it's a new brand that is just launched in France. We gonna open 10 new locations within the country in the next 3 years, and I'm part of the managing team.
Great, that's awesome. And Lucy, if you want to tell us about both or either of your programs.
Hi everyone. So yeah, my first program was an intern in 2015 and 16. Then I returned to Europe, was working for actually a London-based company in Prague, in their office in Prague, where I became a project architect. Then I returned to US, to Boston, to work for a company, a small company called Design Lab. And now currently I'm actually back in Boston working for DLab as a project manager.
Great. And Sang-Hyung, I know you're in the midst of your internship right now, but if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're up to at Atlantic Council.
Sure. Thanks for everything, Talman. And hi, everyone. My name is Sang-Hyun Han from South Korea. And like a little bit of background. So I'm MA candidate, master program in Seoul National University, majoring in international relations. And now in DC, I'm like from this August, I'm working as a Korea Foundation Global Challenger intern at Asia Security Initiative in Atlantic Council. So I think I'm looking forward to having a questions or like the panel discussion as well. So hand it over to Thomas.
Great, thank you. I think one question we see from a lot of soon-to-be interns or a lot of people who are thinking about this program is what will they do when they finish their internship? What is that adjustment back home going to be like? And Gail and Lucy, you both touched on that already, that you returned home. Gail, in your situation, and Lucy, you returned home, and then you were able to come back on a work visa. So you've both been able to leverage the different opportunities. Camille, your program, I think, ended in 2019. So you've had maybe the longest time since the end of your program. What was it like coming back home? How easy was it to find a job? What were the struggles? What were the advantages of your international experience?
So actually, I did not came home straight away. I went. How can I stayed one more year in the US after my program because I got married with my French husband, but still in the US. And so we only returned home last year, in actually 1 year ago now. But it was really easy to find a job getting back home, and I think Gael, you may say the same. I don't know. I have this feeling that. So it's not a straight away back home. It's not the classic. What I did is not the classic what everybody does after a J1 training or internship program. But basically, it was really easy to find a job, and the experience was really interesting for recruiters. And I got a lot of questions during all my interviews on how I got the job in the US, because most people know it's hard to get an experience in the US, and what I learned from it. So it's definitely a big advantage when you're looking for a job coming back home. And the adjustment, it's long. We say with my husband, we just finish our 1 year sorrow for being sad of leaving to leave the US. It's not so easy, but because it was so great in the US. But now we're happy back in France. But we look forward to the next opportunity in the US or anywhere else.
That's a good point. That culture shock can be something that a lot of people are not expecting. That reverse culture shock when it's time to go home at the end of their program. Let's stick with the idea of culture. And was there any? What was the biggest shock when you returned back to France about working culture or just culture in general that you kind of forgot about, or that was vastly different than New York City?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, there is one big thing I had forgotten about French way of working. So it possibly doesn't apply to everybody listening here, but people in France are working a lot in a very scholar way. Whereas in the US, it's a lot about how to get things done, and it's very different. And when you've been 2 years or 2 years and a half in this, I don't care about how it's done. I just want it to be done, and I want the result to work. It's really tough to come back to the French way of doing things in the rule, even though it doesn't work. You have to keep following the rules. That's awful. That's weird. But I try to apply the American mindset to France, and it works.
That makes sense. You have to navigate two very different styles of working. Sang-Hyun, I think you're probably in the midst of this now, since your program is just beginning. Or what have you found that's different at your internship in Washington, D.C. that is maybe different than some of your experiences you've had professionally in Korea?
So I had a chance to work at Korea as in the similar industry in the think tank. So based on my two different experience in Korea and the States was, and also is that I feel like it's based on personal view. I feel like Korea has more hierarchical organization and the structure in terms of the work and the logistics. But in the United States, I feel like we have in Athletic Council, we have more like an equal relationship. So that means that I can express myself as a one of the member or participant in the team, and they treat my opinion or impression very carefully, and they really I can feel like they are really listening my opinion. But those kind of things were, based on my experience, were not in happening in South Korea. So I think those kind of things are really two different cultural shock or experience on my end.
We hear that a lot from participants, that they're surprised at how flat some organizations are in the United States compared to their home country, and the access that they have to the leadership team. Lucy, I'm probably going to come back to you a lot in this point, but because you had two different organizations, was there a difference between your first architecture organization in New York versus Design Lab in Boston, or were they similar to some of your other experiences?
Yeah, so, and I don't know if we have any architects on this webinar, but for me, I've always tried to choose very carefully and wisely where I'm going to work. And so the first internship, that was like a very good beginning because it was a small office. We worked on residential renovations. So that's very detailed work. And if it's a small office and small team, you get to do every part of the project and in every project's phase. So that was a great start in learning. And then after, 4 years when I returned, I was already at the stage where, was looking for slightly different experience. So the office in Boston is bigger, and they mostly care or do institutional projects. That's why Boston, because I never realized that with this many universities in one city, most of the projects will be institutional. So it's like libraries, campuses, and all that. So for me, it was more about building my career and what I want to do in life.
I think that's a really good point for everyone in the audience to remember, that two organizations in the United States are not going to be exactly the same in what their organizational values and structure are. Two organizations in the same city. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that you can have two very different programs side by side. So that's something, when you're looking for an internship in the States, not to just focus on the location. Gail, what's been the biggest, because your adjustment back to the States, your adjustment from the States is also pretty new. What's been the biggest change from your time at Treetop to your position now back in France? What have you learned from your traineeship that's been useful in your newest position?
So I should say first, in the amusement park industry, we have, either in United States or in France, we have processes. So the processes, especially in terms of safety, are the same, and we have to follow them. So there is in technical aspect of the job, there is no big changes on that. But I think the big change I got was the human interactions. What I really love with the American people is they have, this constant vibe of entertainment, this constant, everything is bigger. People are more expressive than in France, and this constant joy of life, if I should say, is just make you smile. So that's the most important. I'm not saying we are every time negative in France, but it's part of the culture. It's a little bit different than in America, and I'm sure Camille, you agree with me. But yeah, I miss this part because interaction in America is I would say easier, and on the first aspect more, just enjoyable for foreigners. So this is the big change, even if I love my country, but it's just, I think there is negative points and qualities everywhere, and it's definitely one of them.
I love that you talked about the human connections, because this is a cultural exchange program, and one of the questions that I did want to ask everyone, and since you brought it up, we can go there now. How have you been able to maintain the connections that you made in the United States since your return home? Did you make connections that will help you to network and to find positions in the future, or what was that process like? And Gail, since you brought it up, I'll let you answer that first.
Okay. So yeah, I think so definitely the training helped me to find my current job, but also is because I decided to maintain my network and to create a new network from America. And if I take my current position and my experience, is the amusement park industry is so small, even if we live in a big world, but the industry itself is small. So the connection in America could be the same in Europe. And that definitely helped me to find a job in France, to find a job in Europe. And we run under, this International Association of Amusement Parks, and we have people in common. So in my industry, networking, I think in most of the industries, networking is very important. And this connection helped me to definitely find a job here. And now I still, connect on LinkedIn. I continue to send professional messages, and on a personal life, of course, I just keep I just speak every day with my American friends I've made there, on Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram. I think it's also something when you experience an international experience. In my case, I love to keep speaking in English, keep being involved into an English word, because I'm attracted by that. So it's definitely something that I want to maintain and to continue in the future.
Camille, I noticed you nodding as well. Have you been able to keep your network up in the same way, or has it been a different process in your return to France?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Gail. Actually, it's like any network, you have to keep it alive. I think it works the same way. It's sending a message, either professional, either personal. If it's professional, LinkedIn is a great way to keep connected. If it's personal, you can use WhatsApp or Instagram or whatever. So that's for any network works this way, and I strongly recommend after an experience like that, you do the work to keep your network active. And for me, it's a bit different because when I came back, I changed industry, so my network did not really directly help. But once again, it's like any network, you never know when it will be helpful, and you never know in which way it will work. Maybe it's them who will need you, or you will need them, you don't know. If I come back to the US, for sure, I know I will contact them, and I'm keeping great relationship with the team I was working with at Hermes, and I do value that. So I hope everybody can say the same. Lucy, Shangin, I hope you have this same positive experience that we had with Gail, actually, with a nice team that you want to keep in touch with.
Absolutely. And I actually recently went through new visa application, and I'm still in touch with all my coworkers from the first ever internship in 2015, which is like almost 7 years ago. And all of those people were willing to help me out, which was amazing. So yeah.
Young, I know you're still in DC, but that's probably very good advice to remember that when you do return home to Korea, definitely stay in touch with all of the contacts and the leaders that you have access to right now. And since you are finishing your program in the next couple months, I did want to ask this question of you. Is an internship abroad a common thing that people do in your field in Korea? Do you think that is going to set you apart when you do return home and you start that interview process?
I think that's really great question. So in like particularly political science major or international relation field, as like Gail described as like his the amusement park industry is really small world. It's like same for political science and IR, like international relations community, since like especially in DC, like we are meeting all of friends, like, and also they are like moving towards another like think tanks or like on the government or private firms. So it's really small world. And also based on like this kind of internship is definitely and obviously helping and beneficial to my like people's career, because like pursuing this kind of internship, I feel like and also as a student, we are studying and we are learning from the book and we are learning from like classes and lectures, but this kind of internship helps really get the sense of how like policy is actually working and how they are really organizing or implementing, and we can see those kind of dynamics as a inner circle or like observers inside there. So yeah, sure, like this internship is beneficial to those who are really in not only in like this kind of poli-sci majors, but also like other panelists said, like every like communities or industries they're taking advantage of this kind of internship. So
We see the stats that people who do international programs are more attractive to employers, and we see the stats that people who do internships are more attractive to employers. And the four of you have been able to combine those two very attractive assets and in a sense kill two birds with one stone. We have a question that has come in from the audience, and I think that it is probably going to be different for all four of you, but I'm very curious. Were there any skills or competencies that you were asked about during your interview with your organization that maybe you wouldn't have been asked about with a domestic employer? So I know it's maybe hard to think back to that interview with whether it was Atlantic Council or Hermes, but were there any skills or competencies that any of your host organizations prioritize that maybe is not something you were expecting to be asked about during an interview?
I think I'm the like I'm since I'm here at DC and I'm currently doing my internship, so I think my answer might be the updated one. I believe. So based on the it's a think tank. So think tank means that they are producing policies and they are servicing to the government so that the policy could be, or the political or like international relations policies could be like make a better world. So in this sense and to that end, they are asked me to submit the writing paper, but it was not mentioned in the notification process. But while they are having me as an interviewee, they asked me to submit the writing sample, so I submitted one. And also like another qualifications such as right, like great quality of writing skills, because we are really doing a lot of research assistant jobs, and which means that you have to write a lot about various topics, including like topics like you don't like interested in, or like you don't even know like at all. So I think, and also like in addition to this kind of writing skills, you have to have a sense of like as a foreigner, it's hard for me to say this kind of word, but as a sense of, you know, like how to present your opinion and the thoughts really correctly and clearly, since in I think every major or every field, those kind of skills are and are significant and really necessary. But for my experience, I think especially for like international relations related jobs or internships, I think those kind of two qualifications are, I think, the most vital component as an internship process.
And if I can complete, I do not really remember the questions I received during the interviews indeed, but I can say that I got surprised by two things. First thing is that for all the internships I looked for in France, I got positive answer really quickly. When I was looking in the US, I got a lot of negative answers in the process, and you have to be prepared to that and keep going. And the second thing that surprised me is actually the internship I got at Hermès of Paris. I would never have gotten it in France, never, because they were Hermès of Paris as a luxury brand in France, French luxury brand. They have like millions of applicants in France who have done the perfect studies to enter the job. My profile was a bit different. I was more tech profile, business, tech, marketing, but pretty different. My previous internships were with like Amazon, so completely different. And the guy was actually interested in this specific background, this diversity, and gave me an opportunity, even though I didn't know anything about retail and I didn't know anything about luxury. And this is also really specific, I think, to the US, to be given a chance that you would not probably have in your own country. So that's what I would remember from my process. But a lot of negative answers first, and then a huge opportunity.
And if I can add,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So if I can add to this, during the process of interview, the biggest difference and the biggest question was obviously, so is it like 100% chance getting this visa and when you can start? So for a lot of companies, and especially in architectural field, it's very hard to, you know, feel this uncertainty in this process. And then the follow-up question would be, so how long is this visa for? And again, like if you're gonna train someone in architecture, you want to keep them if they're good. So that's a very high risk for companies, and a lot of companies will say also no because of this, and you should be prepared for that. That happened to me.
Also, I think simple question. I remember they asked me, of course, for a certain level in English. Some companies, you know, sometimes it sounds maybe a little bit stupid, but some companies ask, you know, for a certain level, some not. So it depends on where you apply and what kind of company you work for. But in the company of services, like an amusement park or restaurant or hotels, of course, we need to have a certain level in English. And also, I remember questions related to the know-how. So how to act, how you act in a team, how you can position yourself as a team member, how you can, what you could do as a manager in this situation, these situations. And I think it's very interesting because, again, in the services kind of, you know, related industry of services, the way you're gonna act with people, you're gonna behave with people is very important. So know-how is sometimes more important than interpersonal skills.
There are so many great answers in those 4 responses that I was thinking about jumping in and adding things here and there, but I'm glad I waited to the end. I think I want to echo the comments that Camille and Lucy said about a lot of organizations just not understanding what a J1 visa is, or understanding what it is and realizing it's not something that they can accommodate. And so if you do have a negative rejection from a host employer, I think keep in mind you can maybe leverage that, and maybe they know of other companies that can manage it, or perhaps they can still be part of your network even if they're not able to host you as an organization. I think especially for trainees, when you get to that 18-month program, there is such an investment in time. It's different than a 3-month summer internship where they're used to having interns come and go each summer. The trainee programs they're specific, and it's not a good fit for every organization. So keeping a thick skin if an organization says no, it's not reflective of necessarily your skills. The other thing that I feel like came up a lot in all 4 of your responses was communication, and the whether it's written communication, whether it's verbal communication, whether it's the nuances of English in Georgia versus Boston. I wanted to ask, have there been aspects of US communication that you've adopted into your professional lingo or your positions now? Like what maybe not necessarily communications, but what aspects of US culture have you rolled into your own professional development, and that you're still using even though your program maybe has ended, or Sang-Young, since your program's still going on, maybe that you've incorporated into your everyday usage now?
Oh, it's really hard to answer the question, but definitely it was my writing, because like as I mentioned previously, like mentioned, writing skill is really important. But you know, as a foreigner, like who are not fluent in English, it's really hard for write and express my feeling in the like sentence or like with the vocabulary. So like for the events, so after we have every event, we have to publish the so-called event recap. Is a like short summary of events and what we did for the events. And I draft like first like my event recap, but there was like so many like edits and errors, and it sometimes really hurts my mind. Even though I know that I'm foreigners, I'm not really good at this kind of writing things, but yeah, but thanks to my colleagues and my directors and my other like friends, definitely I think my writing skills are improving, and still there's a lot to go like beyond, but still it's improving. And as like time goes, my edits or like memos from the directors and colleagues or other assistants are like decreasing. So that's which is really like great news for me. So yeah, I think those kind of things are really like I learned from them, and now I'm using as my kind of asset to pursue my internship.
For me, it was like pretty much anyone in our generation, I believe, speaks English nowadays, right? So for me, it was the professional lingo and the professional efficiency. Like that set me apart from other, let's say, applicants back in Prague when I returned in between and started applying for jobs. Like I knew actually like how to name things in architectural sets and like all the specific details and specifications. So that was huge for me, that I can now be even at my position on this level, and this is still not my native language. Like I'm still like very happy about this. And vice versa, or you know, in the other direction, I feel like I brought into US working environment, and especially in written English and in emails, when sometimes I do deal with like, you know, huge groups of people and giving them directions, I brought this like European politeness, you know, like every time I start email with like, can I kindly, whatever, you know, and that really sits well with a lot of people here.
We actually did a webinar just last week, and it was about business English and usage. And I think that you hit the nail on the head. We always suggest to participants to err on the side of over politeness or just extra kindness, because you're not sure how you might be coming across in a different language, in written communication or on the phone. and also we try and give a list of all the business lingo that may be different in the States versus other countries, and professional idioms that might not be familiar. I think someone had written in, they were from the Czech Republic, and instead of raining cats and dogs, falling wheelbarrows might be the idiom. So figuring out those differences in different languages is, I think, a really important aspect. I'm curious to see if there was any idioms or any business lingo that caught you off guard when you first came to New York.
Oh, I
Putting
honestly
you on
don't
the spot a
remember
little
now.
bit, sorry.
Yeah, it's been a while.
The
No, what I don't remember. Oh, sorry, go Gael, if you remember
no,
one.
you good, go, Camille, it's fine.
No, I was just going to say I don't remember a specific sentence that was weird and I misused, but I do remember, and I did appreciate a lot my American colleagues being really nice with my English. I mean, I do speak English correctly like everybody in our generation, but in France we are really tough when people doesn't use the exact correct word or make mistakes. And I was never corrected in an email or when I was speaking with a colleague. As long as they understood the idea, they would work on it and they would reply. And it was really good having this kindness. And as you say, be extra nice is important. But I appreciated this, and I tried to came back to France with it as well, not jump on every mistake and be nice.
That's true. I agree, Camille. Coming back on your question, I think what I've adopted the most is, so I kept my heated blanket because winter in Paris is definitely stronger than in Atlanta. But more seriously, I try to surround my daily life with English, as I said. Doing everything, listening, speaking, reading in English. I mean, we don't want to lose what we gain. And also, I think also it sounds funny, but you keep memories, and your memories will help you to build, I would say, a brighter future of yourself. So it's definitely things that, not doing the same mistakes, learning from what you failed in the US, because we all done great and things that we needed to improve at that time, and to adapt yourself. I think this is really important to know that when you go in a foreign country, you adapt yourself constantly, because you are not surrounded by your friends, your family, you're by yourself, and you have to adapt. And that's one of the most challenging things that you have to deal with at the very beginning, and not only at the very beginning, but the whole, during the whole program. And it's helped you to grow, I guess, faster, stronger, in a stronger way, and just to know how to do better for the next experience.
Yeah, I think that adaptability is a very important asset. Even you hit the 12-month mark and there's new aspects that you need to adapt to in your program. It's not just in the first couple of weeks when you're settling in. I want to focus, or I want to stick with English for one more question. And Gail, I have just a curiosity for you, because Georgia is a specific English accent that's maybe not as popular. You don't see it in the movies the way you see a Boston accent or a New York accent. Did you have trouble adjusting to hearing people speak English in a way that was maybe different than what you had seen in movies or learned in the classroom?
That's a very good question. At the very beginning, I struggle a bit because the slang is, the expressions are very different. Like you'll, stuff like that is that I mean, I cannot imitate it perfectly, but the expression are different. What I really struggle with at the beginning, I remember one day, that's a funny story. I had to call someone from Kentucky, and I got the guy, and he started speaking with me, and I couldn't understand literally anything. That was very difficult to understand him. Then I just said, okay, I'm sorry, I just gonna give you my boss, and he's going to answer my place, because that was like the first or second weeks, and I remember that, and like the accent was stronger than in Georgia. Even if I was like already struggling with Georgia's accents, then the Kentucky one was, harder. So that was kind of fun. But I think we all went through this, thing, and with the time it's getting better, and then you can. I think after 2 years for myself, after 2 years I can distinguish the accent of the US, not perfectly for sure, but like, oh, when you hear someone from California, it's from from California, the New York accent, now more the South accent. So it's definitely something you learn, but you need time, and I think we all went through that, and we need to go through, because it's part of the culture.
Sorry. At the beginning, I remember being scared to pick up the phones at work. Like, I remember like being terrified, but I had to. I was the, like the person, the first phone, and then I would put the extensions to other people. And look, nowadays, like these days, I'm coordinating teams of people. So you'll get there, but it takes time.
Yeah, I think those are excellent, wonderful anecdotes about the growth that this program helps people to achieve. You go from being worried about answering the phone to coordinating teams to being on a webinar right now, and being able to share your information in perfect fluent English. Lucy, this question is maybe more for you, but I think anyone can jump in. This came from the audience, I think, back when you were talking about hosts wanting to know specific times of when you could arrive because they needed to plan your training plan around a specific time. Let me read this question so I make sure I get it right. How many months in advance would you recommend someone start their visa search, their internship search, so that they get a J1 visa on time? And I know the answer is going to depend, but I'm curious what the four of you think, or what your process was like, and what the timeline maybe looked like for each of you.
I think the fastest I've done it was with DLAP those 3 years ago. I don't know. When I was actually coming January 2020, right before the pandemic. And I remember starting the process 1st of November. Like, that's when I actually got the offer letter, like the job offer letter. So that means 2 months in advance we started, but we were really we were kind of harassing InterExchange team, like we really needed answers, and we really needed that process to, speed up, because again, within architecture, they usually do not comment like very far in advance. Like, they either need you now, and or there will be a replacement. So it's very hard for us in architecture.
For me, once I got the offer letter, it took me 3 months to get the visa, and in total, so overall, I think it took me 8 months to manage to get in the US, 5 months search, 3 months waiting for the visa. So it's long.
Yeah, that's exactly the same, Cami. I took 5 months to find the trainee, the internship. And then, like Lucy, I came on February 2020. So just right before the pandemic, and I started in November, something like that, the visa. So mid-November, so that was 2 months and a half. And depending where you are, because in the embassy in Paris is like crowded, and it's difficult to get it's crazy. It's difficult to get the visa. It's always full of people. But yeah, depending on the country, I guess maybe in Czech Republic is easier, maybe not. Or in South Korea, but
I've always had only a good experience with the Prague's embassy, and also the wait times were always like 4 days, so or a week tops. So that was always very helpful and easier, I assume.
So next time we should move there. I think it's
yeah, definitely. And don't make the mistake to bring your computer at the embassy when you're going for your visa meeting, or then you take a few more weeks to get the visa.
It's very strict.
Another question I wanted to ask each of you, and I think you've answered so much of advice so far, but I feel like there's probably things that you're waiting for me to ask. What general advice do you have for someone who's interested in the J1 visa program, or in the J1 intern, or trainee visa programs.
I think I have three advice. I will try to make it short, but first advice is understand clearly what is J1 trainee, J1 internship, which one you are eligible to, and how to pitch it to a company. Second advice would be either company who already is used to doing J1 and it's going to be easier because you don't have to explain the program, and you try to contact previous interns or previous trainees to get the contacts and to get the job. And if your third advice, if you are not in the case of a company already doing J1 visa, I think, but maybe you will say differently, Gail, I think you will share my opinion, but Lucy and Tangen, maybe you will have different advice. But it was easier for me to get in touch with French company or at least French managers to pitch the J1 visa. So getting companies from your country can be easier. I mean, it's not what you want at the beginning, but at some point it can be very much helpful.
Sure, because it's so complex, I think speaking with your native language at first is easier. And especially, I mean, companies that have location within the US is of course great. But I don't know, maybe the headquarters is in France or something like that. It's easier to start. I mean, for us, it was easier in France, and especially because of the culture too. I don't know. I think there's something like we are famous not being very, how can I say that, good in English. So I think for some managers, when you meet at first sight, is easier for them to understand the J1 visa program. But then when you get into it and they choose you and you are in the process, then it's easier because you're gonna deal with English processes and requests, and it's easier. But yeah, at first sight it's better in native language.
Yeah, and also they understand this rings when Lucy was saying either they need someone now, either they hire someone else. That's very true. If you go to a company, if there is nobody from your country and they don't know the J1 internship or training program, they will not understand the point of waiting, I don't know, 3 months or 2 months and a half to get someone. You're just an intern or just a trainee. So, I mean, it's great, but you're not in C-level position. So they will be, okay, at some point, it's easier for me to get someone in the country. I get tons of university students applying. It's much easier. So that's also why getting through someone from your own country can help a lot.
And I think just to echo your point, I think that's why it's really important to know what the J1 intern program is, what you can do on an intern program, what you can do on a trainee program, and to be able to succinctly explain that to a host employer so that they get it. They understand it's a cultural exchange, that they're not trying to fill a position at their organization. I think the most common reason that InterExchange has to reject applicants is because the host company doesn't realize that it's an internship program and they're trying to get someone who should be coming on a work visa or a different type of visa. So being the expert from the beginning and being able to explain the process and in any way, shape, or form, I think that's a very good piece of advice. Sorry, not to jump in. I just wanted to reiterate that important part.
Mm-hmm. Then I think if I continue your answer, I think another advice I would say is be ready. Set your mind that in a way that your life is going to change for a couple of months, a couple of years, and it's a big decision. And I think when you are not used to go abroad or you're not used to travel that much, but you want to decide you want to go to in a foreign country to do a training or an internship, just be ready, because I met some people that they couldn't accept all these changes because it's still a big decision, and it's just it's, again, it sounds maybe a bit stupid, but it's just like it's very important to be ready and to know where you are, where you go, and where you want to go. So it's definitely something important after taking this decision, because it's a long process. It asks for money, it asks for time, it's time consuming, it asks for a lot of meeting human interactions and research and all of that stuff. And at the end is like, you really want to do it, so yeah, be ready, and then the experience worth it for sure.
And also, like,
think,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry. So yeah, to echo all of you and to add is like maybe really think about where you want to go first, because I have to say, for example, in Camille, I believe you maybe had the same experience. New York City is very multicultural, very pro-European city. It was a lot of us. My roommates at the time, one was Taiwanese, one was Vietnamese. We had the times of our lives. It was great because we all were in the same boat, had the same feelings. We're all like homesick at the same time. So that was like much easier on me. I have to say Boston now feels much more lonely. So yeah, because there are not that many
Yeah,
international people, still a lot, but
I
New
can
York was
imagine.
super easy.
Super tough to get, but super easy to live compared to any other city, probably. Yes.
Like, in addition to like the mindset all the panelists are saying about, I just want to, my general advice might be just preparing all the documents in the timely manner, because it's really important, and they are asking particular document in a like particular time. So what I did was I tried to prepare all the document in like once, and I scanned it everything so that I can just like whenever they ask, I can just like send it to them or like the embassy. Yeah, and also it might be like too practical advice, but for like, I'm not sure about the European countries, but in Korea they asked me to prove my the bank balance, the financial supporting. So I think that one should be like, that one is the most like, not the most, but that one is the thing that we should remind, because like those kind of thing, those kind of documents, and also those kind of like amount of money to prove like financial support or safety is I think it requires such a like long time. Not like we cannot done in the like really short period. So I just want to give those kind of two general advices as well.
Saying, we can say they're asking for books, so it's
Yeah, no, for sure.
no,
And then
it's yeah.
also, one thing, one part of the program that I was not really, and also I believe, and Taman, correct me if I'm wrong, but like part of the money you put in the program at the beginning, and I believe the biggest part is the health insurance. So when I was, those like, I don't know, 23, 24, I did not really care about that. I was never sick, nothing. But like last year and with COVID and everything, there's been a lot happening. And I have to say, in that health insurance, we have even better coverage than some of the US citizens in their companies. So that's a great part of the program, and that it's required to have one as a part of the program. So I really appreciated that.
I think I would tie together what you just said, Lucy, and what Sang-Young said about under a bigger umbrella of making sure you understand what all of the requirements are and what's included in the program. Because yes, the program fee is a fee, but it does include all of the fees that need to be paid to the government and your health insurance. And yeah, there's a lot of paperwork, but there's also as many resources that InterExchange can provide to make that as seamless as possible. But just knowing what you're going to get, what you're getting into, it is a little bit of a bureaucratic aspect of actually doing the application when you think about all of the things that you're coming to learn from your organization. You're coming to experience US culture. You're not always thinking about the health insurance aspect or the fact that you'll need to upload your bank statements to prove that you can support yourself before you get your first paycheck. Just remembering some of those ancillary aspects, I think that is very important. I did want to make sure that I save this to the end, so I'm glad that we can kind of close on that cultural exchange aspect again. But because all four of you are in four different cities, all on the East Coast, unfortunately, we don't have representation from all over the US, but I want to hear about your cultural exchange outside of the office. What did you enjoy most about the? What did you see? What did you do? What did you eat? What are your highlights of your internships or your traineeships in the United States?
I can start. I think so. Speaking about amusement park, I was lucky enough during the pandemic to enjoy Disney World empty and Universal Studios empty without queue lines, so that was pretty fun in Florida. But despite of that, I think United States is a beautiful country, especially in terms of national parks. National parks are amazing. I think we have beautiful landscape in Europe for sure, but I really fall in love of the nature in America and the wildlife and everything. I'm a big nature lover, so it's definitely great. And in Atlanta is a beautiful city in the middle of a big forest, if I can say so. So it's definitely, you know, breathable and just enjoying nature with friends I've met there during weekends, going on the lake, to the river. It's literally beautiful country on that, and I definitely will go back sooner than I think to re-enjoy all these national parks and this nature.
For my end, so I think I have to be like honest. So I'm not a huge fan of like US like food, food in United States, because they're like, you know, as a Korean, I really love like spicy, the Korean spicy one, but I feel like they need some like, it's like not enough for me. So, but I'm trying to like loving those kind of foods as well. But the most like attractive point is that DC as a capital is the city of museum and the like national history. So they have National Archives and also Library of Congress, which has like most like accessible amount of documents and like journals or books in there. And also there's like Smithsonian or like National Gallery of Art and or even the Lincoln Monument and the like National Mall. So I think those kind of things really enrich myself to understand what American history is and what America or United States is standing for. So yeah, I think those kind of thing is most attractive one for me who is like having an internship in Washington D.C. right now.
Lucy, if you want to.
You can go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say like Gail actually. Sorry, too French. The national parks and the landscapes are amazing, and I've had the best holidays of my life, I think, in the US, whereas I was not necessarily expecting it. And the COVID, being there in the COVID time, so it was not during my internship, it was the year I could stay after. For I think almost all of, yeah, 4 of us got to stay during COVID. This was also a big, I mean, it was a constraint, but it was also a big opportunity because we could not move out of the country, or we could not have friends or family coming in the country. So we got to do things that I would never have done elsewhere, to discover the country, to rent a van, to switch home with friends across the country. So I got to spend like 2 or 3 months in California in 2020. I was in New York, but finally half of the time I was in California, switching house with friends and stuff like that. And it was really great. And this is once again the mindset in the US. Yeah, that's great. But I would never have thought about that if I had friends coming, family coming, opportunity to go back for Christmas in France or whatever. So that's good. Nothing is impossible.
Yes.
The mindset.
Yeah, so for me, it's also the nature. Like I'm also a huge nature lover and I go on hikes really often. So Boston, actually, I never realized that Boston is a great combination of ocean and mountains. I love it. So yeah, I feel like I actually just moved into a new apartment, so I hope I will stick around for a bit. And yeah, and also the games. Like basketball, hockey, American football, which I've never seen, but like you get to see like the best players in the world. And so I went to see like I'm going to the Bruins games nowadays pretty often, and to the Red Sox, which is pretty awesome because the Fenway Stadium should be, I believe, the oldest one in the whole US. So that's like there's a really big like sports culture. And yeah, during pandemic, I got to go to Hawaii and just chill there, work from there. And so yeah, no, there's a lot. And yeah, I would recommend this program to anyone who's interested at least a bit.
Yeah, the four of you are reminding me of how much there is to see and do in each of your cities and in the rest of the United States. There's a whole lot to experience during your time here. And Sang-Young, I know you're still you have a few more months left, so you can do the Hawaii, California, some of the mountains too while you're still here. I see we're just a minute over. This has been a really fun hour, so I'm happy to go forever, but I'm gonna wrap it up and let each of the four of you, if you have just one last piece of advice or any closing thing that you want to just share. I think you've all shared a ton of wisdom, so don't feel like you have to, but I want to make sure that we don't end this before you get to say your piece.
I think just go for it, and it's a lifetime experience, and enjoy it at the most, and it's just amazing. It's definitely one of the best decisions I've done for sure.
Same. Agree.
Yeah, that's a perfectly how to describe. Just like challenge it. Just go.
Challenge, yeah. If you like challenge, do it.
I think that's solid advice. Thank all four of you for spending the last hour with us. This has been really fun, and I don't always hear the nuances of internships and training programs once people do arrive. So I'm glad to hear of the very different experiences all four of you have, and I'm sure that our audience feels the same way. So thank you for sharing, and have a good evening. I know it's kind of late in Europe, so I appreciate you giving us some of your evening time over there in France.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thanks,
having
everyone.
us.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.